So we'll move on. We'll let Frank work on his volume. We'll come back and give him an opportunity to introduce himself and tell you a little bit about himself, because like I said, it's very inspirational and powerful. And we're so very happy to have him involved in the work representing the youth voice, and not just the youth voice, but the voice of someone with recent lived experience around some of the issues that we're talking about. So he brings so much more than a youth voice to the table. So I really want you to get the opportunity to hear him. So we'll move to the next item on the agenda, George, which is the continuing with the advisory council update.
Okay. You really couldn't have said that better in terms of what Frank brings to the table in terms of not only a youth voice, but his own personal lived experience. But as I said earlier, we've been extremely busy over the summer. We've done a lot of work with our marketing and communication and working on messaging. And you're hearing more about that message and what we want to continue to get out in the public. We also did some work with Pat Boyd on systems change. Pat is from actually consulting with Population Change Institute and really working around the systems theory of change and how we can really address systems. Because we all know with doing this type of work, it's really important that we address and change some systems. And that's a heavy lift as well. We continue to explore grants and opportunities for funding. I think I reached out to a couple of people and talked about, should we pursue some state or federal funding? And what we recognize is that probably funding is not for us directly, but we should partner with the other organizations in terms to continue to do the work. Over the summer, we started working on our budget, and I'm really happy to say that at the end of September, TCC board approved our budget. We're looking at a budget of over $600,000. A lot of different things that will be put in that budget, such as the conferences and trainings and marketing, communication, outreach, and of course, staffing, and a number of other opportunities that this budget and this funding allows us to continue to do the work. Because again, this work is extremely important. We want to make sure that we're getting that word out and working on system change and building that capacity to do the things that we need to do. We've also participated in several local and national conferences. KB and RB participated at Spark Conference, a national conference to really spread the word about what we're doing here in Michigan and Detroit. And I can tell you the feedback that I had is you guys are doing some groundbreaking work, and the work that you're doing is really, really inspirational. And we want to be a part of what you're doing. So please continue to have the connections and let us know what you guys are doing in Detroit. So thank you, RB and KB. We also want to thank and reach out to Kevin Fisher with NAMI. We participated in the NAMI conference. And Kevin, thank you so much for allowing us that space and that opportunity to continue to share that work of what we're doing with Imperative. Myself, KB, and Chief, and our Chief also came about and really gave us what we needed in terms of a panel. So thank you so much, Chief Dunlap and others who participated in that event. And I think we also talked a little bit about our Demystifying Suicide event. And in that event, I want to thank you, William, and Cheryl for participating in that event. We learned so much in that particular event. We learned that one of the biggest issues continue to address our people, and when I say people, our youth, is depression and suicide. I'm gonna pause on depression and suicide, because when we think about the work and we think about the goals that we have, suicide and depression is growing in our kids. And we need to step up and do something to help support these kids. So a lot of these particular things are going on this summer. And thanks to the advisory council, we continue to do the work for the organization and for the parents as well. So that's just a few things that has been going on this summer. As you can see, we've been busy and the work continues to need to be done. And so with that, I'm going to move and pass it on to you, KB. Thank you.
I'll share. Thanks for sharing that, George. I wanted to share just a little bit more about our Demystifying Suicide event. We focus primarily on youth in the LGBTQ+ community because we know that this is a particular group of young people who are at a higher risk for suicide ideation and attempts and completions. And so we felt that it was really critical for us to have a particular focus on LGBTQ plus youth for this event. And Vince, our community engagement specialist, facilitated an incredible panel discussion. One of our challenges that we have with events in general is just really bringing in more youth and engaging and more engagement with the community. So while we had about 30 folks there, we would love to see our events be even larger in the coming years. And this was only our second annual Demystifying Suicide event. So we're really happy with how the event went, and we're already thinking about ways and how we can begin to grow and further the reach in the community for this particular topic. A couple other things that I wanted to share about the work that we're doing, both internally and with our change champions. We began the implementation of our Dismantling Oppression community cohort. So over the summer, we recruited 11 folks. We've got 5 external partners and 6 external partners and 5 internal TCC staff who are participating in the certificate in dismantling oppression from the University of Michigan. And Dr. Daisha Price, who has presented at our Change Champion meetings in the past and has been critical to helping implement our dismantling racism training here at TCC. She's one of the facilitators for the dismantling oppression certificate. So we will all be completing that certificate this week. It's been a 6-week process. So we're really excited about that. And the folks participating in this certificate program will be able to go out into the communities and within their own organizations train others in dismantling oppression. So we're really excited about that, and think this is a great opportunity to begin to spread the work across other organizations and our partners. We have at TCC, we have an Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Council that has been established for the last probably 3 or 4 years. And one of the things that we realized is that while our team is working on Crisis to Connection, the Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion Council is also working on initiatives around equity, diversity, and inclusion. And we wanted to make sure that we were really aligned and collaborating together. And so our team is now having a more hands on deck in terms of helping move the equity, diversity, and inclusion work of the organization forward. So we're really happy and excited about that as well. Last week, several of us attended the Just Lead conference that was hosted by New Detroit. Did anyone attend that? No one else. It was an amazing conference. It was their first conference, but when we get the resources, we'll share them out with you, because it was 2 days, but it was a ton of information, and there's definitely people that were at that conference that we need to connect with and loop into the work of Crisis to Connection. So we will be doing more networking and trying to get more people involved that we've met at that conference. And then another thing, just one last thing, I know we have to keep the agenda moving, so I won't be too much longer, but one of the other things that we're looking at internally at the Children's Center is developing and implementing a comprehensive trauma assessment for our community. Right now, there's one provider on the west side of the state in Kalamazoo who is conducting these comprehensive trauma assessments, which are often required by MDHHS for our children who are in the child welfare system. And so this poses a huge challenge for those youth who are in the Tri-County area, who then have to travel several hours to Kalamazoo to get this oftentimes it's an 8-hour day assessment. And so we're really looking at how can if it's possible for the Children's Center to implement something like this, and what would that look like? What would that entail? And maybe who can we partner with to start thinking more about that, to make the.
Aubrey,
Mhm.
this is Andrea. I think Easter Seals is also trying to establish themselves, so you might want to reach out to them as well.
Yeah, thanks for saying that, Andrea. I know they had I think it was called the Luna. It was a Luna project, and we'll definitely have to look into that and connect with them, because maybe there's an opportunity for partnership there. That's it on my end. Any questions or thoughts?
Aubrey, really quickly, and this kind of ties into what George was saying, as I travel to events and even mention the work of the Crisis to Connection Imperative, it receives overwhelming interest. So I think we're going to see more people, not only across the state, but across the country, looking to us and looking to follow our lead. So comes with a little bit of pressure, but that's good pressure. And people are really interested in what we're doing. So just wanted to make sure, like I said, as I travel across the state and really some of the national events I've been at, just the mere mention in passing, people like, wait, what did you say you're doing? And how can we be a part of it? Or how can we learn from you? So it's tremendously well received.
We need to get you some of our kicker cards, Kevin. We've got these little kicker cards that have information. We've got QR codes on there that they can go on and look at our webpage and sign up for our meetings. So,
I missed one planning meeting and Kelvin kicked me off the mailing list. So
Aubrey, as we say that, we want to make sure that all the council gets the kicker card so that they can do it when they're out there. I know Rep. Young does a lot of things in the community about the imperative, as many others. And I know Andrea, and I can just name a bunch of people out here. We talk about the imperative. So we need to make sure that everyone is armed with that literature as they refer them back to how can they be a part and what can they do to be involved.
Yeah, definitely. I think we'll have to work to do that for sure.
That's a very good point. And, we also have the media kit, which has some of those QR codes in them as well that can link people to the work and give people an opportunity to attend information sessions, see the video about the work and the other resources that we have on the web page. So we'll make sure that everyone gets that updated media kit as well. I just want to make sure that we are understanding, and you can leave that slide right there, Vince, because I really want to make sure that we understand the connective tissue of all of this work. And so us presenting at the NAMI conference, us presenting at the Spark conference, and by the way, the Spark conference presentation was very well attended, very well received, as was the NAMI conference presentation. But us getting out there in the community, locally, nationally, and getting the word out supports the work. The work of events like Demystifying Suicide supports the work. The concepts and the tenets around the work are undiagnosed and untreated trauma, implicit bias, and systemic racism. And so the work of dismantling oppression supports the work, because we want other organizations to be anti-racist organizations as well. And so all of these things that we're doing, aligning the EDI work with the work of C2C and how those tenets connect, all of this is in support of the work that this group is doing with Crisis to Connection. So I just want to make sure that everyone has a clear understanding of why we're doing all of the things that we're doing to support the work. Next slide, please, Vince. So I want to talk a little bit about the strategic planning updates. Over the course of about the last 8 or 9 months, we have had a strategic planning subcommittee who's been working on our community-wide strategic plan. How are we going to take this work into the community? This is a large-scale systems change project. We really want to look at those systems that are impacting the life trajectory and outcomes of Black boys. And so in order to do that, we've invested time on the front end in developing a comprehensive strategic plan to say how we're going to assess and reimagine these systems. And so just wanted to bring you up to speed on some of the things that the subcommittee has been doing. That subcommittee is comprised of 4 of our advisory council members who are working with 4 community members as a part of that strategic planning team. And so thus far, we've created a BHAG, which is our big, hairy, audacious goal, that North Star, that thing that all of the work points towards. And that BHAG is to make Detroit the greatest city in the US to raise a Black boy. And we have created indicators and metrics to measure Detroit with other cities. And they are built around the social determinants of health, because there is data out there with respect to the social determinants of health that we can see how we stack up with other cities around those social determinants of health. And so we've also identified work group areas, and the areas of focus are going to be mental and physical health, education, juvenile justice, and economic opportunities. We've also identified work group champions, people who are going to coordinate the efforts of each of those work groups as we take a look at the mental and physical health system, as we take a look at the education system, as we take a look at the juvenile justice system and the economic opportunity out here. These folks will be coordinating and championing those work groups to say, when we bring all of those systems experts in the room, you know, how do we not only change the system, but how do we reimagine the system? George mentioned Pat Bowie, who is our large-scale systems change expert that we're consulting with around how to even think about these systems. And it's not wanting to tweak an existing system, but to reimagine a system. If we were starting from scratch, how would a system look in education that really addresses the needs and outcomes of Black boys specifically? And that's a paradigm shift, because what many efforts have tried to do in the past is really look at how to tweak the existing system. And so the theory of change and the way that we need to think about this is not how would we tweak an existing system, but how would a system built from the ground up that addresses those ancillary issues that Black boys have specifically, how would those systems look? And then how do we get there? We've also identified work group launch target dates, which are going to take place in April of 2023. So we're looking at building out that strategic plan through April of 2023, and then launching those work groups and those strategic plan activities in April of 2023. Next slide, please. So what's in progress now is our continuing consultation with our strategic planning expert, Chris Elias. Chris is a strategic planning expert who supports the work of the Children's Center and also companies and organizations nationally and internationally. And he's been leading our strategic planning subcommittee around that community-wide strategic plan. We're also in consultation with Pat Bowie in terms of that systems change work. She's done large-scale systems change work around the country. And the difference between strategic planning for an organization and strategic planning for large-scale systems change is that ecosystem that you don't have legitimate authority over, but you have influence over. And so you have to approach that differently in terms of how you're going to make those changes. Also, we're identifying partners who are going to take part in the work of those work groups. We're creating work group recruitment tools, and we also are creating work group tools and resources. How will those work groups be successful? What are the tools that they're going to need to make sure they're operating effectively and efficiently? And so we're coming up and producing some of those tools that those work group champions and those work group members are going to need. We're going to move into our satisfaction survey action steps, and I'm going to turn it over to Vince to talk to you about the survey that we had change champions and members of the community take around engagement, what we learned and what we plan to do with respect to those learnings.
Awesome. Thank you, KB. How you doing, folks? So as KB said, we were able to sift through our satisfaction survey and really understand kind of the best route of action in the coming future. So one of the first things is our newsletter. Some change champions really like the idea. Others think that there's a way that we can really improve that section. So I think that we're going to go ahead and go with that. We are working on the template and putting in the actual information about what we want to make the newsletter look like. And we think that the newsletter would be a really great opportunity to really help engage people that maybe aren't currently with our C2C imperative, because I think that we can give pertinent information in a very compact way that can really garner interest outside of our change champions that are here right now. Additionally, we know that Zoom meetings are very tough. So we're going to be looking for possibly in the future, maybe some hybrid meetings, which includes Zoom and then people that do want to meet in person, just because we know that face-to-face contact is always the best way to do it. So that'll be something we'll be looking at in the coming months. Another big update is we're actually looking to implement a CRM system into C2C. That will really help us with our organization and kind of a relationship management, as the acronym really states. So that'll help us contact and organize unique individuals, organizations. Will help us better track our community touch points, help with event management, our business outreach of this imperative as well, on top of just general stakeholder communication and kind of tracking and reminders. So we think that'll really be important for the imperative to really get out the information to the right people and to make sure that we are actively tracking that information in a much more efficient way than using various different systems, Teams, Office 365, and really just kind of putting it all into one platform. So we're really excited for that. And we are working to get that implemented in the near future. And then finally, we know that youth voice is something that's very, very important to not only the change champions here, but to TCC as an organization. As we talked about earlier, we have Frank Blackman here, who's really going to be leading that charge. And it's important that we include youth voice because that's a very, very important perspective that we haven't really been able to garner in the past. So, on top of the current youth leaders, we're going to be looking at reaching out to other pertinent youth groups within the organization. Some of those look like Teen Hype as an example, as well as our very own, Youth Advisory Council. We think that we can get their opinions and their thoughts on the work kind of within the imperative as well. So we're really happy about the feedback that we got. And I just wanted to give an opportunity to tell, all of you exactly what we're doing to address those concerns and those comments.
Thanks, Vince. Once again, I want to tie what we're learning about engagement back to the work that we're doing. One of the concerns that we've had is losing momentum in terms of the work that we're doing. But I think it's very, very important to lay the foundation in terms of taking the work to the community, to be well prepared and well to equip. As Kevin said, people are looking to us, and there's a bit of expectation with respect to the work that's going to be done. And so we want to make sure that when we relaunch or when we launch those work groups, that they're in the very best position to be successful, and that we are going to be moving to do what we say we're going to do, because all eyes will be on us. And so as we look forward towards launching those work groups, we'll also be looking to re-engage the community on a large scale in terms of almost a relaunch of the imperative. You know, we had meetings where we called the community in and told the community what we're going to do. We let the community know about the structure of Crisis to Connection. We let the community know about the plans. Well, April 2023, it's time to actually get out there in the community and start to implement these plans that we've come up with. And so when we look forward to 2023, in January, we're going to be doing a quarterly Change Champions meetings that's going to lay out our approach for the upcoming year. We're going to review the previous year and lay out our approach for the upcoming year in that meeting. In March, we're going to have the first of a series of town hall meetings that focuses on those areas that we plan to assess and reimagine. We really want to get the community's perspective with respect to what are the challenges in those areas? What are the needs in those areas? What would they like see to have done in those areas? So we really want to get community input, get community buy-in, get community participation. And we think the best way to do that is going to be to go right into the community and have in-person town hall meetings to gather some of that information and some of that input. Then in April, we'll come back with another quarterly Change Champions meeting. In May, we have our planning for our Faces of Trauma event, participating in a youth mental health summit with the Pistons. And in June, we're having the Fatherhood Forum. And we know that some of the outcomes that Black boys are having, the undesirable outcomes, are because of the fact that they don't have father figures and fathers in their lives. And so once again, this is an event that supports the work and hopefully helps to improve some of the outcomes for Black boys. As Vince said, we know that the virtual world has kind of taken away some of the connectivity and engagement. And in July of 2023, we'll be looking to do an in-person quarterly Change Champions meeting. In September, we'll be having our third annual Demystifying Suicide event and Walk a Mile event as well. And in October, the quarterly meeting, and then in November, the second of our town hall meetings. And so our plan is to really re-engage the community as we launch that community-wide strategic plan and start to work in the work groups and really focus on the areas that we know we want to assess and reimagine for young people.
Hey, KB, I know that as we talked, I think either earlier this week or last week, and we were talking about ways in which we can engage youth, or how can we present information to the juvenile justice population. And we talked about exploring, looking at some of the schools that we have strong connections with. And then we said, you know what, what's bigger than that is, what if we get into the juvenile justice and speak to that particular group? I'm really excited to say that, put this on your calendar, we are meeting with the state director, Demetria Starling, who is over the CSA, and that's the Children's Services Administration. Also, Director McCree, who's over juvenile justice for the state of Michigan. They are both very much interested in the imperative. And as we've been saying, all eyes are on us. All eyes will be on us in order to really talk about the imperative and the work that we do and what we can and will do in terms of systemic change and addressing some of the issues that are really preventing our Black boys from being successful.
George, when is that meeting with the director? Do you have that date? And
Yeah.
can I
Yeah,
I
Monday.
invite myself?
Yeah, Monday afternoon. I have we're doing a Teams meeting with them.
Yeah,
both of
'cause it's important for them to know that they have members that are engaged in this work, because that can be helpful in order to move things the way we need things to be moved. So whenever you're meeting with folks in Lansing, in particular, my little stomping grounds, think about y'all's rep.
Gotcha. I'll
Yeah.
include you on the meeting as we talk to them.
Yeah, I'll figure out a way to, you said it's at what time? I'll check my calendar. Did you-
Right now, I believe it's at 3:00, but I'll send you the exact time. It's either 3
Okay.
or 4 for Monday.
All right, that sounds good. Thank you.
George, thanks for that connective tissue. Once again, this is one of the strategies that we've talked about with respect to reaching the largest group of young people that we can reach. So instead of doing an event like Demystifying Suicide or Faces of Trauma at a location and trying to draw youth to the event, what George is talking about is us taking the event to the youth, whether it be in a juvenile justice system, in a school, or where that youth is already there, that we can package that event and take it to them instead of having the event and trying to get them to us. I think it might be a much more effective way to reach more young people and a much more effective way to spread the word about the work of C2C, because we already have some existing partnerships in and around schools, and it just makes sense to take the message to the folks who need it the most instead of trying to get them to come to us. So that was something that an idea that George came up with around the juvenile justice system. I want to thank him for uplifting that, but that's something that we as a operations team have talked about in terms of a strategy to expand the events and the reach of the events as well. So this is a good segue into our marketing plan, because as we begin to think about re-engaging the community, now it's time to do something. Now we have a product, a strategic plan that says these are the things that we're going to do. It's time to call the community back into the table on a large scale, and a great deal of that is going to be around our marketing plan. And I'm going to turn it over to Mike to talk about some of the things that we're going to be doing around the marketing plan to be able to re-engage the community.
All right, can you guys hear me? Okay, everybody hear me? Hey, can you guys hear me okay? Okay, cool.
Yep, we can hear you, Mike.
So I wanted to share, I presented a while back a very exhaustive kind of plan. I'm going to give you guys the tactics and then give you a tentative timeline that aligns with some of the activities, but mostly it's front loaded and it's really focused more on the paid media, the social media, and the earned media aspect of it. So what I'm hoping to do is support the programming of C2C with the tools that we've gathered and garnered through our partnerships with the media, through our partnerships with each, within the imperative, and also some of the tactics that we're planning to implement overall. So I'll just share those real quick, and then I'll get out of everybody's way. And as we implement this, we'll have more details, because we're going to want to pull some folks in, whether it be some change champions that we want to designate. Of course, if it's youth representative that we want to, we need voices from those actual Black boys, not just us talking. That's an approach that we also want to take. And then we also want to look at the advisory council as well as subject matter experts. So as I share my screen here, I'm going to just quickly run down this particular presentation. And oh wait, let me do this. Hold on, I'm sorry. Is it presenting? Okay. All right, so I am about to present now. Share my screen. All right, so this is the revised marketing plan. We worked on a few things, and I'll just share, as I shared, the tactics first. The tactics include the tie-ins. Of course, we're going to build our C2C messaging and engagement around current agency events, right? So we have our Demystifying Suicide that we just had, and then we also have the Faces of Trauma event also that we want to focus on as well. We do have C2C public meetings that we currently have, whether it be the Change Champion meeting in July, or if there are other meetings, we want to leverage that. And we also want to leverage other partner events. So as we gather partnerships, we're gonna build into that calendar some activities and actually just some promotion in that aspect, and even promote some of the partners as well. So that's something that I really want to connect with. Working with Kevin and his connects, Mind Matters with Dr. Michelle, he offered to provide us some exposure in that aspect. We still have to negotiate what that looks like. So I just wanted to give him some credit and thank him for his support in that area. That's the tie-ins that we already know that is low-hanging fruit. The earned media is not as low hanging. It's something that we really have to leverage. And that's a lot of earned media from a place of me putting materials together to entice the media to cover it. We'll launch with an initial press release and media kit, establish expertise, of course, by our advisory council and as subject matter experts. And then we'll curate personal stories, of course, our youth and then community change champions, family to highlight to the media. So those are just two areas. Social media. We were going to look at it from a 12-month perspective. Community conversations, there are town halls that are virtual that can align with the Change Champion meetings as we do them on let's say the Zoom. They could also go on the Facebook for a public, exposure if we need to. Building a platform for general engagement, and then we're going to launch a Facebook group page that will be moderated, that we can provide and share information back and forth. I think that's extremely important because then once we get that particular dialogue going, then we could post videos, we could post events from all of our different partners. So it's more of an engagement across the board. The paid media, we did secure a 12-month contract with KISS 105. We will have a spokesperson support from Mason and TuneUp, which are trusted voices in the old school radio space. So that kind of speaks to a certain audience. And then we also will get PSA audio and video recorded for replay in that particular space on their website as well. Then we also secured contracts with Michigan Chronicle, Black Magazine, and Metro Times to do quarterly placement. That could also be monthly. Thinking Metro Chronicle will do a monthly column, which will help remind and people get the community focused in on C2C. Video production, that's something that's very, very unique. We're going to do a 30-second, a 60-second, and a 3-minute video. The first one is a PSA intro video. That will be the 30-second piece that we're going to push out. That's meant for like the public meetings. That's meant for, the media, if we put something online. And also if we put it on, television, for instance, Fox 2, they're willing to put a PSA out, so PSAs is not earned media. It's sort of like, hey, this is a complimentary piece. And then we want to have videos that focus on those areas that we're having work groups. So that will be the 60-second or the 30 minutes videos as well. And the narrated voices are Black Boys, Advisory Council member, and Community Change Champions. So those are the main tactics. As I shared, we will have that video, the intro video. There'll be a sneak peek I could share with everybody in November, but we'll roll that out once we launch officially, either in January or February. So this is the timeline. I had it in a quarterly format, but now I have it more in a monthly format. As you can see, there's more stuff going on in the beginning, January and February. We kind of skipped March because I have a quarterly contract with most of these media outlets. So we have January, February, April, May, June, July, August, all the way up to November, where you have interviews slated. You have, some columns slated. We do want to launch everything in January and February. And of course, we're aligning with all the different events. So the NAMI Walk, the Walk a Mile, and then our own TCC events as well. So partnership events, we want to plug in there as well. So we can make sure that we're present and accounted for, and we can push out to the audiences that we have. So that's part of the coordination aspect with the team, with the planning committee. And I would love to be on board with those particular areas. Once the calendar starts getting updated, then I'm going to update my outreach plan. And that's really all I have currently. If you guys have any questions, you have some thoughts or ideas, I'm very much open to those. I appreciate the time, and I'll open it up. Okay. unshare my screen here.
This is Chris Ruth. I posted the question, you mentioned Facebook, but since
Yes.
a lot of the youth are moving on to things like TikTok, et cetera, are we covering, the trends of all the social media platforms where?
So a lot of those, oh, absolutely. So here's the thing about TikTok and those particular, they're not only one that's dynamic, that's a dialogue, is Facebook and IG. When you look at communication like a live feed where people can communicate, that's something that we want to have a conversation. So when we do a community conversation and people want to ask questions on a live stream, those are on Facebook and on IG. We are securing a contract with a social media firm that can't just push out the media, push it out on those other outlets. So you look at each outlet and they all have special characteristics for different audiences. As you said, the youth TikTok is basically a video platform and they push it out, but there's no dialogue where somebody can respond in real time for a meeting. But absolutely, people do the TikTok and then they add to the TikTok and people add their own narrative. So it's really something that we have to monitor on a dynamic basis. So we're securing, and I didn't share that in this presentation, but we are securing a social media group. We'll leverage our youth advisory council and a lot of our groups that are internal to TCC, as well as our youth representatives. So thank you for that question. That's a very detailed.
I'm glad to hear that. It makes a lot of sense because you want to get their attention and direct them to where the ones that are interested, direct them to where they can have the dialogue.
Right.
But it's just about awareness, getting that message out to.
Yeah, so it's the awareness and then it's the dialogue to get the feedback from the community as well. So yeah, we want to celebrate and push it out, and then we also want to have that dialogue with the community too. So
right, thank you.
Hey, KB, can we go back to let Frank have a few words?
Frank, you want to jump in and reintroduce yourself and tell the folks what brought you to the work?
Sure. Can you guys hear me okay now?
Yes.
Okay, sounds good. I'm joining off my iPad, so it's going to be a little bit different. But so like KB said, my name is Frank Blackman. I am an alumni of University of Detroit Jesuit High School, and I'm currently at Loyola University Chicago, majoring in neuroscience. So a little bit about myself. My work started about 3.5 years ago at U of D Jesuit. We initiated a program there called Be Nice, which was focused around suicide prevention and mental health awareness. Since that program, since I've graduated, obviously I'm in Chicago now, so I've been doing a lot of stuff here and trying to, implement my voice into the community a little bit here. Because very similarly, to Detroit, they have a large African-American population as well that really need help and assistance with not only mental health, but with gun violence and things of that nature. So I've been really trying to implement myself here as well as back in Detroit. So when KB brought this opportunity to me, I thought I would be a good candidate to kind of fit this role and take over the youth advisory team and kind of lead this portion of this program. So I'm very excited to not only get to, implement my voice and to assist, but to learn from the dynamic panel that we do have here. So I'm looking forward to it, and I'm excited for the future. So thank you, guys.
Thanks so much for that, Frank. Frank also is an entrepreneur and has, I think, multiple companies and endeavors that he's running. I was also impressed by that as well. Just going to be a young man who is an asset to the imperative, to the work, and an inspiration because the opportunities that Frank has afforded himself and that the community has afforded Frank, we want that not to be a one-off. We want every Black boy in the city of Detroit and the county of Wayne to have those opportunities to contribute to the community as a whole, like Frank has been able to do, and to really, be a beacon of hope. And so one of the projects that we're working on around the media campaign is a video that shows what the current situation is, what the situation could be, and all of the parts of the community that will benefit from the richness of Black boys being able to contribute to the community economically, educationally, and being in good mental and physical health. And so really excited to have you aboard, Frank. The last thing that we have on our agenda is around a group activity. So I recently went to a town hall meeting, and I won't name the entity that put the town hall meeting on. But what happened was that for 2 hours, folks on the dais spoke at the community. And it was 2 hours that went by before there was an opportunity for the community to have a question read that was read off cards. So hand-selected questions, read off cards. There was a break that happened, and half of the community left out of the meeting during that break. And some people are smiling because perhaps they were there at that meeting. So I want to me, a town hall meeting is interactive, it's engaging, and its purpose is to hear what the community has to say about the challenges, the issues, and most importantly, the solutions. And so I want us to design the series of town hall meetings that we're having that are going to be respectful to the community and is going to garner us the most buy-in and the most opportunities at resolutions as the community sees it. Now, I have a picture in my mind of what some resolutions are and what we should be doing to reimagine some of these systems. I'm sure everyone sitting in this room does, but what does the community really believe are those issues, those challenges, those resolutions, those paths that we should be on? How did we get here, and how do we get where we want to go? You know, there's a quote that says, every system is designed to produce the outcomes that it produces, perfectly designed to produce those outcomes. And so when I hear people saying the system is not working, I always shake my head, because the system is working perfectly. It's working perfectly for some folks who is designed to work for. It's our job to make sure that it's working well and bringing about desired outcomes for Black boys. And so how do we take this message to the community, but also engage the community in what they think the solutions are? And so I just wanted to take some time and get some input from this group around some ideas with respect to how our town hall meeting should be set up. So I want to talk about things like locations. What are the moderators, you know, who are going to be most effective around these areas? And what are the elements of the meeting that's going to be effective around these areas? So the first meeting that we're doing is going to be around mental and physical health, because that's low-hanging fruit from us. The Children's Center and many of the people on these panels, on the advisory council and on the panel, have connections to the mental health realm. And so we thought that would be a good town hall meeting to start off with. So let's start off with some ideas around locations. This is going to be our first town hall meeting, our first time in the community in person, specifically talking about crisis to connection. What are ideas around what would be an appropriate location? Is it a central location? Do we think about doing one on a west side, one on the east side, not around the same subject matter, but as we do one on mental health, as we do one on education? Do we start off on the east side and then do the education one on the west side, and so on and so forth? Or do we try to do it more centrally? I'm going to open it up to the floor for comments. Feel free to jump in.
KP, since I actually raised my hand for once, you know, I'll start with this. One, I think it's probably smart to provide all the information, or I should say the same information, on both the east side and west side of the city. I don't think we will get full value if we say we're going to talk about mental health on the east side and then talk about education or something on the west side. I think we have to make sure the entire message is heard by the audience. I think maybe if we can do a community center, like Northwest Activity Center or something where we can, it's a gathering spot. You know, my first thought was a church or place of worship, but sometimes that's not comfortable for everybody. So I think a community center would be a great opportunity. The thing that I really wanted to say is this: when we talk about content, I think we need to be concise, and I think we need to be direct. I think the community needs to clearly understand what our intention is, what the intention of this imperative is, and what the benefit is to the community. I know we've faced this and we've had this conversation from very early on when we started the imperative. We need to be very clear about why we titled it an imperative for Black boys. We need to make sure the community understands the entire benefit to the community by us addressing that population. And lastly, I'll say, we need to talk in very plain speak to people. One of the things that I'm hearing more and more as I participate in conferences, interviews, whatever around the world, around the country and the state, is that people, we need to meet people where they are, not be too clinical, not be too, we need to let people know, back to my old days in sales, we need to sell the benefits, not just the features. When you sell features of a program, when you say, well, we're going to have this program, you lose people. But when you sell the benefits first and then say, these are the features that we're going to help us achieve these benefits, I think that's when we maximize community buy-in and understanding. You're on mute, KB.
Thanks, Kevin. I'm just taking some copious notes here. I will say my only concern, and I do agree, my only concern with an east side and a west side is double the planning, double the planning effort. And so I just want us to be mindful of that, because being the person who's going to be in charge of this first event, and I'm not saying that because it's not something that we may be capable of doing, but I think we need to be mindful of resources, timing, and whether or not that is going to be plausible in this particular case. Because Kevin, as you know, putting on one event and coordinating and planning and doing all of that takes months and months of preparation. So, doing two events for one subject area may be a little challenging.
I got you. My only concern, and I'm looking at the comments in the chat, and I agree, and this is something obviously the group can determine. My only concern is making sure we're able to reach the intended audience. And you and I were talking before about the suicide event. Do we have to come to them, or are we going to ask them to come to us? Because some people can't come to us. And that's my concern, is the whole concept of meeting people where they are. But I'll yield to the advice and the discretion of the group. But I want us to be conscious of that. Some people won't be able to come to us. Some people might not be able to come to a university. People might not be able to come to Cass Tech or whatever. So how do we bridge that gap? Go ahead, Mr. Ware. I'm done.
To Kevin's point, William is fine. To Kevin's point, I know these things take a lot of planning, but I was thinking about maybe small groups. So we could go to places like neighborhood schools, maybe neighborhood churches, and do maybe smaller events, because all of these other big locations, people just don't have the transportation, the means and the methods to get to them. And when we're talking about bringing this type of thing to the community, sometimes the people who need it the most don't have access to get to some of these bigger places. So perhaps we could think about doing smaller events so we could go directly to people.
I hear you 100%, William, and receive that. The only concern, and I keep taking it back to resources and feasibility, even when you're planning small events, you know, like the size of the event doesn't necessarily dictate the amount of planning. So if you're planning it at a small community center or at a large central location, you're going to invest the same months of planning time into each of those events. And with respect to bandwidth, I think, and I hear that we want to reach as many people as we can. So one idea is possibly having it at a central location and doing a Facebook Live feed there from the event for folks who can't make the actual event, and taking some questions from that Facebook Live feed as well. I just worry about being on the committee that planned Demystifying Suicide and co-leading Faces of Trauma, the months and months of preparation that it takes to secure moderators and speakers and to organize that whole thing, trying to do 4 or 5 small events as compared to a one central event where we can meet, reach many people. I think you're gonna have capacity issues there.
If I could just a quick follow-up, I guess I was thinking along the lines of we had video presentations that we could do on our laptop. And let's just say a principal would want us to come out and talk to a parent meeting, that one person could go with a laptop, you know, do a presentation for about 15, 20 minutes. You know, it would be a smaller scale, but the same information. Does that make you know what I'm saying? I'm just trying to reach as many people as possible. And sometimes the planning doesn't have to be, you know, large scales, just small little things that an individual or 2 people could do with a quick presentation on a laptop that they could show at a slide at a teacher's meeting or a parent-teacher conference meeting. And then from there, they could go out and get more information.
I see Michael's hand up, and then Andrea, I think she had something she wanted to share as well. And so, Mike, I will let you chime in, and then we'll go to Andrea.
So real quick, to address your idea, William, that is one of the reasons for our intro video. We could take that along with us. We could provide it and empower ambassadors as we've got in the chat a suggestion on ambassadors. But the other thing that is key and very beneficial in a live stream is that you can still do remote locations. You could still have that central location. You have satellite locations, one like a listening or viewing party on the east side, and then the viewing party on the west side where it's live. So those ambassadors, somebody, if there's a partner, a program partner on the west side representing, we are working with Mac, Mac Development. They have a little center there. They may want to, view it, and then they could chime in and have a mic and say, hey, this is us from Mac. We have a question over in our zip code. This is what we're dealing with in our zip code in that particular area. So that's one of the benefits of that live stream. It could still expand out to different locations and still be live. And that's one of the things I want to leverage too. So it is that one location physically, but virtually it could be in various locations as well. So that's a preparation that I'm working on with I have a social media management firm that we're kind of strategizing on how that works. It takes a lot of coordination and a lot of technology for stuff like that. So we'll provide more information on how that works. But that's a very good point. I just wanted to share that with you guys as well.
So Mike, I was gonna say, Kelvin, I understand resources and planning, and you're absolutely right. It's just as much work to do 5 small events. I would recommend that we start with a large central location. And like you said, Mike, have the live Facebook live feed, but partner with a high school. They already have the relationships with, you want Black boys there. If this is the population that we're trying to improve outcomes for, they should be represented. They should be at the event. You're already connected to those families. You can partner directly with the schools. You can get a large group in at one time and then just kind of build on it from there.
Excellent feedback. Taking copious notes, taking all of this into consideration. William, to your point, that doesn't necessarily mean we can't do the presentations as well, but the audience that we're trying to reach with the town hall not only is to get the information out there. Representative Young was asking, I think, who is our audience? It's the general public. We want to increase awareness. We want to educate the public on why the work is necessary. We want to bring attention to the work. Social media coverage at that large town hall meeting does not preclude us from a teacher wanting to know more about Crisis to Connection and us going out there and doing a presentation. I saw Representative Young's hand, Frank's hand, and then Max.
Frank was before me. Go ahead.
Okay.
Frank.
Yeah, I was just going to say that going off your point, KB, and I think everybody else is a little bit, it's just that what I've noticed in past events is that people tend to focus, especially kids, on social media. And I think that needs to be a big aspect to what we do. I think that the social media video, whatever it is, whether it's a video or it's a post, I think it needs to be consistent. And I think that these early media events, whether it be the radio interviews or whatever, it just needs to focus around what we're currently doing with the mental health and wellness event. I also want to add that U of D just opened a recreational center not too far from the school, and it's free for the community to come to. So I thought I think that's a pretty good meeting place for us to do the event, just to consider.
Thanks, Frank.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So you guys have been a part of large scale things before, and we know the work that goes into them. This, as important as this is, and we know how important it is because we put aside 2 hours on our day, regularly to come and meet and plan on and strategize around this. But getting the regular public to get it is a whole different thing. And we have to do something that is going to be, in addition to getting folks the good work, is something attractional. So what are we going to offer? Is it going to be a breakfast? Can we have a pancake breakfast and everybody come and everybody listen? When you come, you'll automatically get a ticket to be entered into a $100 gift card, a gas gift card. We're going to have to think about those things, and I can help find sponsors to support that work. My apologies. But I can help find folks. But as we're thinking about this, we've got to include something that's going to be attractional, because unfortunately, when I heard the numbers at the Demystifying Suicide, as important as that was, it should have been triple the numbers. So, and I don't know what they did because I missed it, but I just want us to be clear that as we're planning, we've got to think about that. And that's why I wanted to focus on, I was like, okay, are we trying to get the young men there? Who's our audience? Because our audience is going to help me and my thinking around the things that we'll need to help draw people. So I just wanted to kind of add that.
Rep Young, it's the community at large, because we want to raise community awareness, but we definitely want the voices of those Black boys who are currently experiencing these systems, as well as their parents. How are they navigating these systems as parents, and what do they need these systems to look like? So it's the community at large, but we definitely want that youth voice and that parent voice there as well.
So with that, and then I'm just gonna add this. I'm gonna stop because I know we got Matt's hand up. One of the places that we need to focus in terms of our partnerships and building this funding is gonna be faith-based communities. When I look at, there are churches that already are they have these youth councils, they have all these different things for these young people, and it comes with the parents. So, just throwing that out there as well. Thank you.
No, thanks, Stephanie. I'm definitely drinking your Kool-Aid in terms of, yeah, that this event has to be fun. Among community organizers, and maybe this is a saying, so you're familiar with, some folks say the future, or the change rather, should be irresistible. And I think that's exactly what you're saying, that like the vehicle to get there should be irresistible. I also wonder, if this is a place for, I think I heard one of you say that the Children's Center already has a youth advisory council. So, I mean, from Skillman and our strong focus on youth leadership, hats off to you on that. And I wonder if this is an opportunity to involve them more fully in the planning for this event, to exactly some of the points that Stephanie is raising. What will be the draws, whether it be food, prizes, entertainment, what have you, and what are the accommodations that are needed? Do you need to provide transportation to some specific groups or subsets to make sure that they get there? Do you need to provide childcare, et cetera? And I realize all this adds to the event. Along with getting ideas from the public. To me, these are also opportunities for Crisis to Connection to validate itself, in the sense that you can say authentically, we've heard from the community, we didn't just decide to lead on this important thing on our own. And so with that, I'm more in favor of a number of events, appreciating everything that you've said, Kelvin, about this all takes time. And at the same time, I guess from my own experience, like once you've done something once, it gets a little bit easier as you go along. And at the very least, on the flip side, if some critic comes along and says, well, you only had one event one day, even if it was virtual and in person, I had X going on that day. If you have a series of, say, 4, that happen different places, maybe one is entirely virtual, it gets a lot harder for somebody to say, oh, I couldn't make any of those. It becomes clear that they just wanted to be a critic and didn't really want to be part of the solution. That's all I got.
Let's we got about 10 minutes left. Let's talk about the actual content. Like, what do we, I got some directions with respect to, we need to be concise, direct, clear, let the public know why Black boys, talk in plain speak to people, meet people where they are, and sell the benefits and not just the features. But how do we want this platform designed? One of the things, like I said, that meeting that I went to, 12 people on the dais preaching to, what do we want? What are the elements we want to make sure that this is an interactive and engaging yet meaningful dialogue for the community around these particular subject areas? So let's give some thought to how do we want them designed. And we don't have to come up with everything right here, because I'm going to ask people who have recommendations to email me directly, and I'll drop my email in the chat. But I want us to start thinking about, what do we want the design to look like? So we've talked about some locations, we've talked about some premises around how the communication should be. What do we want the design for a town hall to actually look like? And then who would be an effective moderator for a town hall meeting? Because I think that brings a lot to the space as well. So I'm thinking you got to have some kind of draw. If we could have Michael, a local influencer who would be there, a local celebrity who would be there, who has a story around mental health and how they are resilient around mental health, would be an idea for me. May not necessarily make the greatest moderator, but would, to have some words and talk about their resilient story. But who around mental health do we believe that we would need to be a contributing partner to this particular conversation? And what do we want that conversation to look like?
Looks like Cheryl has her hand up.
Cheryl, jump right in.
Well, mine is sort of a crossover from the last discussion. Who said we had to cover one subject?
You mean multiple subjects at one particular event, Cheryl, like
Yeah,
education, mental health?
that gives you, so when you talk east-west or whatever, you may be able to double up on the topic and still hold them in multiple locations. And that way, I'm just thinking maybe we need to think a little differently about how we're going to do this. And that's part of the format that you're asking about. How do we format this meeting? The other thing, and I hate to be cliche, I'm so sorry, but young people respond. We've got a couple really exciting new pistons that folks are really excited about. And I don't know, I know you have a connection, so that might be a draw for young folks to come out. And I'll kind of leave it at that.
Well, Cheryl, thanks so much for that out of the box thinking, because who did say we had to cover one subject area? No one did, but you know, that's our traditional thinking. So thanks so much for that. And yes, the Pistons relationship as well, leveraging that relationship is a good idea as well. I see, Matt, is your hand up from previously or?
No, I was just inspired by the conversation once again. So yeah, I mean, picking up off of Cheryl, but going in a different direction. I think that I guess there's two things here. First, I mean, when we talk about mental health, we often talk about it in the negative versus the positive, at least when I hear it. In the Children's Center, you may have a more nuanced view, but rather than focusing on individual issues, I would focus on your larger goal of your BHAG of, you know, that making Detroit the best place to raise a Black boy. And if that's the case, then I think that the conversation and who you choose should be different. And I'm going to call on someone here as an example, but I'm not volunteering him. So, you know, we just were introduced to Frank. Frank, I'm sure you have an amazing story to share about the supports, the community that came around you to help you achieve as you have. And I know, thankfully, you're not the only Black young man in Detroit that's made those kinds of achievements. So having someone like yourself that can share that kind of a thing to help us move from our vision to an individual reality, and then help us see that, oh, we could make that reality together for many, many Black boys.
I do like the idea of talking about multiple subject areas and focusing it around, if Detroit was the greatest place in the US to raise a Black boy, what would that look like? What would that look like around economic opportunities? What would that look like around mental and physical health? And then to do that in a central location starting off, and then to do that in a east side location, and then a west side location where you're covering multiple subject areas, I think makes much more sense than trying to focus in on hone in on one area and plan multiple events for one area. So that's very helpful. And so I think the moderators, the folks that we invite, but keeping those talking at folks to a minimum and allowing the community to speak with us about what their concerns are is really, really helpful. I am going to turn it over to chat so that if people have recommendations, if something inspires you at the end of the day, in the middle of the night, or whenever your inspirations come to you around planning that initial meeting, please email me. And George, I will turn it over to you and Kevin to close us out in these last 4 minutes.
Well, thank you. I'm going to say this and give it to you, Kevin, to close. the work that we do is extremely important. And I cannot thank each and every one of you for taking the time out and investing the energy, the vision, the commitment of the work that we're trying to do in Imperative. As I've always said, this is a journey, and it's not a track meet. You can see every day you hear in the media or your own community, our kids and families need us more than ever before. And if we are going to be a part of the solution, it starts with us. And when I say it starts with us, individually, if we self-reflect on one thing that we can do to address the issues that we've identified and that we've said and talked about for decades, it really starts now. So with that, I'm going to thank you each. And I'm going to turn it over to you, Kevin.
Thank you, George. And I'm going to echo what George said. And I want to add this. You know, when we started this and we reached out to each of you and asked for your participation, we said this is not going to be a how-to that we're going to put in a book and it's going to end up on a shelf and not yield any fruit. This has to be intentional, meaningful work, which means that we're going to roll our sleeves up and go in the community and do what needs to be done so we can reach those families, not just those Black boys themselves, but remember we talked about all of the supports that those young men need to be successful. And me being one of those people, I get that. So whatever we have to do, whether it's one meeting, whether it's a hybrid meeting, whether it's, if we got to go door to door, I'm in, because that work is so important and will yield the benefits that we seek. And that's so important, not only for our community, not just for the community in the African-American community, but for the entire community. And I think once we get out there and make people aware of that, we will have tremendous buy-in. So I thank you all again for your presence and participation. I know, as George said, this is a marathon, not a sprint. But I think the fruit that we will yield is well worth it. So thank you again for your time today and for all you've done leading up to this and what we'll continue to do.
Well, that brings us to a close. The time is 11:29. Oh, 11:30. So we're getting you out of here right on time. Thank you all so much for joining us. We look forward to your continued support and commitment to making Detroit the greatest place in the United States to raise a Black boy. Have a great day.
Thank you, everybody.
Everyone.
Thank you. I'm getting out. I see you waiting. I'm getting out. Unless you live on day. Have a good one, you all.
Thank you.
We're still recording, not that.
Vince, can you stop the record?